WBRN Radio in Boston and on the Bostonred Network. This is Numbers Man, the episode this week in economics on the 23rd of April 2017. We have some information here. Some of it's a little old, but not as old as it could possibly be. We have the latest numbers out, the employment report. I believe it's dated on the 7th of April, but it's the most recent one we have, and we'll check and make certain of that. And we also have the drilling activity. We'll have that current on how many wells are being drilled in the Dakotas and elsewhere. That affects, of course, the pricing of petrol, which is basically rested around $50 a barrel, $55 a barrel. Basically, that has been the price. And we'll look at the supply, where it is in the U.S. And on the jobs scene, future jobs, the Trump administration is coming out with a tax plan, not a tax plan, but a quote-unquote a blueprint. Tax reform, if you want to call it that, or new approaches to taxation in the U.S. are very, very contentious. They take a long time. There is a lot of, as Lyndon Johnson would say, horse trading involved, back and forth to get it done. Also this week, the Congress must pass an extension to keep the government quite literally operating. Now, that is one of the tit-for-tat type operations. Trading is done. Also, at the same time, the Republicans are supposed to come up with another version, and they've had many of those, of their health care plan. DJ Trump is wanting to push it through there, but the problem is this, that basically any plan that they come up with would cause devastation to the healthcare system, whether it be hospitals like the one that's will be closing out in Independence, Kansas, the one that's on the brink of closing, used to be owned by the Sisters of Mercy. They've changed their names. In Topeka, Kansas, and many in these red states, smaller city medical centers have been around since the 1800s, are now being forced out of business because of the federal, because of the insurance marketplace, not the federal marketplace. The rates are set by various state commissions willy-nilly, and also by the insurance companies basically get what they want. So one solution the Republicans have offered is to buy across quote-unquote state lines. That won't do very much good because the insurance companies, those monopolies, would just simply go back to various state insurance commissions and get more favorable terms for them. So it is a standoff. What happens? Do the Republicans come up with some plan to change that? Pre-existing conditions is one, and also at the same time, such things as wellness tests, particularly for women, those kinds of things. In other words, preventive medical practices are one of the things they would give the states the right to race to the bottom, so to speak, states like Mississippi that are already at the bottom. And that in itself does not assure a very good healthcare system. That is one of the flags up there. And at the same time, the whole job spectrum is based upon, will there be a quote-unquote what we call public works program passed by the Congress. According to the Trump administration, they want what's generically called shovel-ready jobs. What that means is about 90 days after the legislation is signed into law. What that problem is that although it could be signed in law, we'll say if it passed in May or June, perhaps May, and then you have 90 days to get operating there, you get into Q3, almost Q4 of this year before you start to see the jobs materialize. And at the same time, we've had the last two job reports have not been stellar. To eliminate the slack in the economy, you need about 350,000 jobs to be created each reporting period. And you're not getting those. The last report was under 100,000. We'll get to it in a minute. The average, I think, has been about 250,000, 225,000, which it works, but you don't get the slack out of the economy. But these other so-called things, the steel protectionist type stuff there, these environmental rules that have been scrapped, will, quote-unquote, create some jobs. But in terms of the pipelines, well, there's litigation coming in Nebraska. Be watching that. That pipeline could be held up. That's the XL pipeline there, running across the land of farmers and ranchers. They're opposed to it. So those are some of the things out there that, and also the number of jobs that will be created. Various studies say various things, but the State Department study on permanent jobs, about 35. We'll give them about 50 jobs that will be permanent after the initial stage. Several thousand workers will be involved, but that is several thousand workers involved. The retail sector, at least the brick and mortar part, has been devastated. We'll get to that in a minute also. So you have a situation here that if you create 500 jobs, you lose 1,000. So you're really not going anywhere. That's what happened to G.W. Bush. After 9/11, he was able, excuse me, with Homeland Security and various other operations, the federal government was spending tons of money out there. The various conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan, they managed to create jobs, but also they lost all the jobs that they created when the Depression came about. So in other words, there was no net sum gain in the whole adventure. And that has been one of the problems that have perplexed economists at this point, especially with the new administration, which direction they were going. Under Mr. Cohen's leadership from Goldman Sachs, they basically, this is the Trump administration, have been following a more conventional policy stance on some things, but it's sort of back and forth. And one of the problems in business, there needs to be a consistent path. Now, today the French people are voting in France. That could affect the balance there, particularly with the United Front Party by Ms. Le Pen. So we'll see that. And in the United Kingdom, the Prime Minister there, May, has called what they call snap elections for June. And Brasic will formally begin that process once she starts that. It's about a 2-year process. But at the same time, the Trump administration has signaled that they will try to do a trade deal, quote-unquote, with the EU and go to Britain post-Brasic afterwards. So in other words, the old political term thrown under the bus, that they're going to try to do a tariff-free zone or whatever with the European, the EU, and they'll deal with the British when they figure out where their economy is going, which has not been that sustained. Let's go to this jobs report, and we'll use this as a sort of a benchmark. This is the call employment situation. This is for March. The rate declined to 4.5% in March, and total non-farm payroll employment edged up by 98,000. That is about 150,000 short of normally what they have. They have the employment rate decreased by 0.2 percentage points to 4.5 in March, and the number of unemployed persons declined by 327,000 to 7,000,000 Both were down over the year there, and we get amongst the major work groups, the total employment rate for adult women was unemployment rate, 4%. For Europeans, 3.9%, relatively low. For Latinos, 5.1% in decline there. The jobless rate for adult men, 4.3%. Teenagers still at 13.9%. For African Americans at 8%. For Asians at 3.3%. Very little change there. In March, the number of persons unemployed less than 5 weeks declined by 232,000 to 2.3 million. This is seen as the most employable group. In other words, they've only been unemployed for 5 weeks, and if there is any upward trend in employment, they would probably be some of the first hired. The number of long-term unemployed, that's only 27 weeks. Now, part of the problem is about roughly a half of a year that they are not counting these people after the 6-month period. Little changed there, 1.7 million of them. They account for 23% of the unemployed. Over the past 12 months, the number of long-term unemployed was down by 526,000. The labor force participation rate at 63% in March, and the labor population rate was at 60.1%. Changed little. The unemployment population ratio is edged up over the year, while the labor force participation rate has showed no clear trend. The number of persons employed part-time for economic reasons at 5.6 million. There was a little change there in March, but was down by 567,000 over the year. These individuals would have preferred full-time work. In March, 1.6 million persons were what they call marginally attached to the labor force, a little change from a year earlier. These individuals were not in the labor force and wanted and were available for work there. Among the marginally attached, a nice term, there were 460,000 discouraged workers. That's roughly about 500,000 there, down by 125,000 from 1 year past. The remaining 1.1 million persons marginally attached to the labor force in March had not searched for work. Now to the establishment survey. We always do two. The establishment survey, the total number of payroll employed edged up, as we said, 98,000, following a gain of 219,000 in February and 216,000 in January. Over the month, employment growth occurred in professional and business services, 59,000, and in mining, that's probably petroleum, 11,000 there. Retail trade lost 30,000. In March, employment in professional and business services rose by 56,000, in line with the average monthly gains in the prior 12 months. In March, let's see, job gains in service to buildings and dwellings, 475,000 there. That would be over the 12-month period. And in engineering services, architectural and engineering services, 7,000 there. Mining added 11,000 jobs in March, but mostly gains occurred in support activity for mines. 9,000 mining employee, 9,000 mining employment has risen by at 35,000 since the recent low in October of 2016. In March, employment continued to trend up in healthcare, that many of the critics said it would not on the Affordable Care Act. 14,000 with job gains in medical centers, 9,000, and outpatient care centers, 6,000 there. In the first 3 months of this year, healthcare has added an average of 20,000 jobs per month, compared with an average of monthly gain of 32,000, not quite as robust, in 2016. Employment and financial activities continue to trend up in March, 9,000, and has increased by 178,000 over the past 12 months. And down here, retail trade lost their 30,000 jobs in March. Employment in general merchandise stores declined by 35,000 in March, and have declined by 89,000 since the recent high in October of 2016. Employment in other major industries, including manufacturing, wholesale trade, transportation, warehousing, information, leisure, hospitality, and government, showed little or no change. The average work week for private non-farm payroll types at 34.3 in March, and in manufacturing, the workforce edged down 2 tenths to 40.6 tenths. Overtime edged down by 1 tenth an hour to 3.2. The average workforce for production and non-supervisory workers edged down by 1/10 hour to 33.6. In March, the average hourly for all employees increased by 5 cents to $26.14, following a 7 cents increase in February. Overall, the year's average earning hourly earning rose by 68 cents to 2.7%. In March, the average hourly earning for production and non-supervisory workers increased by 4 cents to $21.90. And we still have the fight for 15. Very interesting indeed. In March, the average, we got that, 7 cents, and the change in total non-farm payroll for January was revised down from 238,000 to 216,000, and the change for February was revised down. And you'll see some revisions coming along here, 235,000 to 219,000. With these revisions, employment gains in January and February combined were 38,000 less than previously reported. You'll see some of this as we move along. It is just symptomatic of what happens as they revise the numbers. A lot of fluctuation around the holidays. So now we're in Q1. It'd be kind of interesting to see where we go in Q2, because Q2 is normally one of the bellwethers, but part of the problem we always have is as we go into Q2, we take in the summer months, so we have to always look at that. Now we're going to the market people here. This is more recent data. We have the Flash U.S. Composite PMI, and we have the Eurozone PMI. All these on the 21st of April. And maybe we'll look at France too. Let's go to some of these, and we'll get them up here. The Eurozone PMI, and we'll do France because of the election of their flash. Wait a minute here. going through here. That's the French version. Yeah, where are we? Oh, here we go. Oh, we'll take France first because they are voting today. The composite outlook index, this is from the Market People, rose to 57.4, and it was 56.8 in March. The French Service Activity Index increased to 57.7. It was 57.5 in March. This is a 71-month high. The Manufacturing Output Index rose to 56 at 53.7 in March. The French French manufacturing PMI rose to 55.1%, 53.3% in March there. So let's get into a little bit of what's going on here. The French PMI data points to the 10th consecutive month of private sector growth in France. The market flash French composite output index, based on 85% of the normal monthly survey replies, registered 57.4 compared to March reading of 56.8. This is April, actually. Okay, we'll get it. The service sector activity increased for the 10th time in as many months. Moreover, the rates of expansion accelerated to a 71-month high. Manufacturing output, new business. In line with the trend, April saw the 10th consecutive month rise in new business. The rate of expansion quickened from the previous month and was the most marked since May of 2011. Notably, the rate of growth accelerated to a 72-month high. Strong client demand. French private sector firms raising their staffing numbers, added workers during April, therefore continuing a trend that has been evident since November of last year. Moreover, the rate of job creation quickened to a 68-month high. Both manufacturing service providers continue to take on additional staff. The amount of unfinished work at companies operating in the private sector in France in April, thereby extending the latest sequence of increased backlog to 14 months. Input pricing faced by French private sector companies increased for the 14th consecutive month. During April, the rate of inflation accelerated to a 70-month high and was sharp. Overall price pressures intensified in both goods producers, service producers, but continued to be felt most strongly by the former. The average selling price rose for the first time in 5 years as firms sought to pass it on. Finally, the private sector companies maintained a positive outlook towards output growth over the continuing 12 months. A commentary here. PMI data signals further strong growth and momentum. This is from Alex Gill. He's an economist at IHS Markit. While the dominant service sector remains the overall driver of growth, the rate of expansion in the manufacturing sector accelerated in March as demand for goods continued to be buoyant by a relatively weak euro. The numbers provided further evidence that the French private sector remains resilient to political uncertainty, and that's just where the election is, with a number of respondents anticipating favorable business conditions following its conclusion. That is France. On we go to the Eurozone PMI for April. It's at a 6-month high also at 56.7, excuse me. It was 56.4 in March. The flash service PMI activity index at 56.2. The Eurozone manufacturing output index at 58. It was 57.5 in March. That's a 72-month high. Oops. Eurozone economic growth hit a fresh 6-year high and rose to its highest for almost a decade as firms boost operating capacity in a time with buoyant demand and widespread optimism. There, the market Eurozone PMI rose to 57 in April. That was based on 85% response rate there. Growth of incoming new business and backlog on completed work remain close to March's peak. The strength of demand helped to sustain a level of business optimism there. The positive business mode and a strong order book situation in turn propelled firms to take extra staff at the fastest rate since June of 2007. It's 10 years. Growth accelerated in both manufacturing and services to the highest level since 2011. The former once again recorded the fastest pace of expansion. Job creation likewise remained strong in both sectors, with manufacturing employment rising at a rate not seen since 2000. However, while new order growth in manufacturing hit the strongest since March of 2011, the largest export gain since 2011, growth of the service sector new business inflows waned slightly. Similarly, while optimism about the outcome rose to a joint record high in goods-producing sector, confidence dipped to a 3-month low in a service sector. We'll watch that. And let's make sure we got everything here. Cost increases were widely blamed on rising global commodity prices. This is one reason we keep a very, very close watch there. The costs being lifted higher by the weak euro. Supply chains also continue to tighten, signaling a growing trend towards sellers markets for many items. Suppliers deliver time lengthened to the greatest extent for 6 years, evident of rising wedge prices continue to be seen. German slowdown offset by strong growth in the rest of the region by country. Faster business activity growth in France. We talked about that. Was moderate in Germany, with the pace of German expansion still running at one of the fastest rates in 6 years. Commentary here from Dr. Williamson. He's the chief economist there. The Eurozone economy has enjoyed a strong start to Q2. April flash PMI is running at a level consistent with 0.7 GDP growth, up from 0.6 in Q1. Such growth, if sustained, will invincibly lead to upward revisions to the 2017 forecast. Robust rates of expansion are seen in both manufacturing and service, the former clearly benefiting from a weak euro. Rising employment is also benefiting the service sector, in particular via higher consumer confidence and spending. The French election, we get to that, pose a higher near risk term there. As you would expect, France has risen above that seen in Germany. That's very interesting because Germany was the titan there in Europe. Both countries are enjoying their best growth spells in 6 years. The survey price measurements remain elevated at their highest in 6 years, suggesting that we'll see renewed upward pressure on consumer pricing in the coming months. Sorry about that. And finally, on to the U.S. PMI at 52.7. It was 53 in March, 7-month low. The U.S. Service Business Activity Index at 52.5. It was 52.8 in March. The flash U.S. manufacturing PMI at 52.8. It was 53.3 in March, number 7-month low. Flash manufacturing output index at 53.4. It was 54.4, another 7-month low there. So this is what we're able to pull out here. It signaled a further slowdown in private sector output growth. The latest reading point to the weakest rate of expansion since September of 2016. Moderation in private sector growth reflects a loss of momentum in both the service sector economy as well as the manufacturing economy. April's data also revealed the weakest rise in private sector payroll numbers since February of 2010. Driven by softer pricing of staff hiring among service providers. There is a sign of a squeeze on operating margins in April as input price inflation reached its strongest since June of 2015. At the same time, price charged by private sector firms increased only marginally and at a slowest pace since November 2016. Composite index is based on the original survey. Now the market flash services PMI, a growth of business activity across the service sector continues to moderate from a 14-month peak in January. This was heightened by a fall in the seasonal adjusted market flash U.S. Service PMI Business Activity Index to 52.5 from 52.8 in March. The latest reading was above 50, of course, no change there. New business growth remains moderate in April, although the latest upturn was stronger than the 12-month low seen in March. So in other words, we're in a two-month cycle here of lows seen. Business growth remains moderate in April, although the latest upturn was stronger than the 12-month low seen in March. So sort of a mixture, I should say. And new business growth remains moderate there at a 12-month low. And let's see. Subdued demand, lower volumes of incomplete work acted as a brake on staff hiring. So we're seeing those numbers in terms of workers here. Service providers, needless to remain upbeat about their prospects for growth over 12 months. Oops. Now to the summary here. The comments from Dr. Williamson. The PMI data suggests the U.S. economy has lost further momentum. Starting, get my pointer set here. The survey are signaling a GNP growth of 1.1% after 1.7% in Q1. That's in the second quarter. The vast service economy saw the weakest monthly expansion for 7 months, and the manufacturing sector showed signs of growth. slowing further from the 2-year high seen at the start of the year. So it was an outlier. The labor market also continues to soften. The survey signaled a marked downstep in the pace of hiring in March, which continued in April with less than 100,000. The survey respondents indicated that some prop has come off the economy since the post-election bounce. That was back to Dr. Greenspan's irrational operation there. Ahead of, April, and business optimism about the year ahead also brightened. There is good reason to believe that growth could revise again in the coming months. Excuse me. That'll be interesting in that as we move into May, June, and July, those are the summer months. Usually the economy is not as robust in those months. A lot of people take their holidays, etc., during those months, so it's a little harder to get at it. Let's go to the U.S. Energy Information Agency. Natural gas inventories in heating season above a 5-year average. Yeah, we'll look at this quickly here, and then we'll get to the drilling production report. Oops, just need to make a little adjustment here. Well, let's do the drilling first, because that's so. This is barrels per day, and they're breaking this down. But basically, we add all of these up together. 3 million actually, 562,000 in April, 3,508,000 there, a change of 42, and this is a new gas. This is gas wells. Oops, let me get back over here to Petro. In the Balkans, we had barrels per day, 1,067,000 in April, 1,068,000 there. Not very much change. And rig weight average there in April, 725, 735 in will be in May of 2017. I'll get this right. The production report uses recent data on the total number of drilling rigs in operation, along with estimates of drilling production. So some of this is estimates, but basically we have a difference of 10 in terms of these are oil rigs here. So it's a marginal report at best, but we are seeing an uptick there in drilling. And let's go back here, petroleum over liquids. We'll look at alternative quarterly coal reports. We'll look at it. This is also April 17th. The quarterly coal provides details on coal production, exports, imports, etc. These are million short tons. Let's see here. We got 2016, the first quarter. Oops. 173 million tons there, and the second quarter Well, we'll go to the fourth quarter, 199.6 million tons. This is of coal. The fourth quarter exports of 119.3 million short tons, an increase of 54.1% from the third quarter. There, it continues to import coal primarily from Colombia, as 72.2%, from Canada 12.6%, Indonesia 11.5%, and no imports were recorded from Australia in the fourth quarter. So this is basically an outline of where the imports. I didn't know Colombia, but anyway, new things happen all the time, I suppose. U.S. coal consumption totaled 180.6 million short tons in the fourth quarter of 2016. This was 19% lower than the 223 million short tons reported in the third quarter of 16, and 8.2% higher than the 167 million short tons reported in 2015. So it's up and down in the coal domain, so to speak. Let's see, did we get the drilling production? This is for April. I think we did. We got it. So basically this is finishing up the right. Yeah, we went over this anyway. Okay, so much for that. Let's go do the numbers from the BBC. In light of the election in France, people are voting right now there. They are sent paper ballots by their post. Okay, so we'll go to business here. The IMF, I think we talked about this in our introduction, dropped anti-protectionism pledge. This in itself we'll look at this. This is the IMF, incidentally. Very interesting situation here. The global lender IMF and a World Bank have dropped a pledge to fight trade protectionism. From a closing note of their spring meeting, the IMF said members would work together to reduce global trade and current accounts imbalances through appropriate policies. This comes as the Trump administration is looking to cut the trade deficit. The threats to impose tariffs on nations that have trade surpluses with the U.S., including China and Germany. This is what they call an American First policy. The IMF early in the week had warned that protectionist policies that could choke off improved global growth. But they had a meeting in Washington, and they changed everything in their minds. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Protectionist policies, a number of discretionary trade measures implemented by G20 members from 2008 to 2016. The U.S. is at the top of the list with roughly a little over 1,000. Then comes India, then the Russian Federation. There are less than 600. And then Brazil is way down there. And Germany, less than 400. And Italy and France less protectionist. And China, surprisingly, excuse me, less, and Japan and Saudi Arabia at the bottom is South Korea at about 100 them. Meanwhile, Mexico's central bank chief, Augusto Carstairs, who chairs the IMF steering committee, attempted to downplay the significance of omitting the pledge. Oh well. Instead of dwelling on what the concept means, we managed to put in a more positive, more constructive framework. One spin, no doubt. Okay, let's move on here. In Saudi, the Exxon was denied a waiver, a sanction waiver for the Russian Federation. The Saudi king ended public sector pay cuts, and they do it by decree. And it's evidently done, and that's the end of that. Reverses the pay cuts. King Salman has reinstated bonuses and special allowances. This is civil service military personnel for his son, Prince Khalif. He's the new ambassador to the U.S. The Saudi Twitter user debate, well, anyway. The price of oil, $52 a barrel. Under the cuts, the ministers have their salaries reduced by 20%. Housing and car allowance for members of advisory Shura Council was cut by 15%. Salaries and allowances, 45% of government spending in 2015 are 128 billion. That'd be 99 billion pounds. That's according to some of the records out there. One never knows. Anyway, back here, and we'll do the numbers. Wind us down to the markets. And we'll see exactly where we are, at least in terms of the markets. In terms of the macro situation, well, oops, got the wrong one here. The employment situation in the U.S. is a bit tenuous. We haven't, at this point, looked. We're waiting to see May. We had March, but I guess April and May as we move along. The BBC Global 30 at, let's see, 9770.9 in the positive at 13%. Now we go to the FTSE All Share. It was in the negative 2.32. In Amsterdam, they were, let's see, where are they? 0.47 in the positive. In Frankfurt, the DAC was at 21.25. In Paris, they were in the negative 18.71, probably because of the election. In Brussels, not 0.71. In Madrid, 4.50. In Zurich, they were in the negative 3.88. In Moscow, these are all on Friday, incidentally, they were at 15.61. In Johannesburg, they were in the negative 294.82. In Bombay, another negative here on Friday, 57.09. On Thursday in Karachi at 1,147.08. In Lahore, they went in negative at 45.11. In Colombo on Friday, that was Thursday instead of Karachi, 30.29. And in Wednesday in Tehran at 311.60. In Sydney on Friday, 31.20. The Nikkei on Friday was at 190.26. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong was down negative 14.96. In Shanghai on Friday, they were at 0.05. In New York on Friday in the negative 30.95. The Nasdaq at 6.26 in the negative. The Merck, that's the commodities market out in the Midwest city of Chicago, in the negative also at 7.15. In São Paulo on Monday, 1,046.17 in the negative, and in Mexico on Friday, 248.42. That is the markets. And so on we go to the commodities. Commodities are beginning to play an ever increasing role in national economies, particularly in job growth, cost of product, and what the consumer will ultimately pay, and others. Brent crude futures. This is on Friday. We're at $51.97. That's down $1.02. The spot was at $54.90, down 43 cents. West Texas Intermediate was down $1.11 at $49.60. Cocoa was up $47. This is on the ICE futures there. And gold was up $1.60. That's the Forex, $1,281.50. Dubai was up $1.10 at $1,282.40. Silver was down 21 cents at $17.98. On to Euronext, Life futures. Cocoa was up $37 there. Corn was down $1. Robusta coffee was down $1.33 actually there. And the Bloomberg Commodity Index finally was down 54 cents at 83.90. So that's where they were. And this data is from the BBC, provided by digitallook.com, another new aggregator out there. This will do it for us. For the consumer, obviously, keep your eye on the prize. For those in business, and make it a productive week. You're kind of in a transitionary period. The Congress will decide if the federal government will be funded in the coming week. And, of course, tax proposal, not legislation, will come up from the administration. And at the same time, perhaps a new Affordable Care Act. They've been pledging to repeal Obamacare. We don't know. It'll be devastating. We know about that. And we'll be looking, depending on what they do or don't do, into what the costs of any repeal would be and what the repeal will be. Good day.